In this video, we're going to talk about setting up fixtures, and fixtures are a way of setting up some local data that can be used for a variety of things. In this video, we're going to look at understanding how to set up and import those fixtures or those bits of hard-coded data that we can use. And then we're going to actually write a test that uses stub data or this kind of hard-coded set of fixtures to kind of mock out a network request so that we'll have a set of reliable data. So let's go ahead and dive in. So we have our test runner running. We've got our application running locally, and we're in our myfirsttest.spec.js. So first of all, whenever you initially make your Cypress initial setup, Cypress bundles this fixtures folder. And inside of it, they've got an example.json file. Now you can use this, which we're going to in this video. You can add more JSON files as well. And the default path to finding and accessing these fixtures, which we'll talk about in a minute when we actually set this up, is Cypress/fixtures. So if we look in here, this is just a simple JSON file with a name, email, and body, and we're going to be using this in our test. So if we go to my first test, we can comment out our old tests that we're not using currently. And let's go ahead and set this up. So we can start by just making sure that we can pull in some data. So we'll say pulls data from a fixture. We can use our normal arrow function syntax. And we can just use this cy.fixture command. So now Cypress knows that we're looking for a fixture. And by doing so, we don't have to type in this like absolute path of like ..source/ Cypress or whatever. By default, it goes to Cypress/fixtures. And so now we just need the name of the JSON file, which is example. And you don't even need to type in .json at the end. It's smart enough to know to look in Cypress/fixtures and then find this example.json file. So we're going to grab that fixture. So now we have access to its data. We're going to chain a .then and just grab the data, and you can call that whatever you want. And let's just log it out. So we'll do cy.log. We'll do data so we can see it, and then we'll take a look at the data that we get back. So if we save this, grab our test runner and refresh, here's our data, and we can see that it's an object. And if we click on it, we can see I've opened up the console, and here's our data. So we've got our body, our email, and our name, which we can see in our example JSON file. These match up. So already that's pretty cool, just knowing that we can have this set of data in one spot and we don't have to, kind of similar to the video from earlier in the series with setting up the Cypress JSON file with some like variables and things like that. By using these fixtures, we can just write our set of data once and then have access to it through the Cypress.fixture or the cy.fixture command. So let's take this a little further. We can also, so now we have access to this data, we can actually also update it in line. So if we wanted to modify that data for a specific test, we can say like it updates fixture data in line. And so what we do here is our cy.fixture command from before, where we're pulling from example. Then we're going to take our data, and then we can say data dot, let's say email equals updated at mail.com, and then let's go ahead and log out our data. And we'll say updated this time, and we can say, oh, it wants single quotes. And let's take a look at our updated data. So if we save this, we've got our test runner. So the first one pulls data from a fixture. We can see that our email is hello@cypress.io. And our second one with the updated fixture data, we can see that it's updated at mail.com. So not only do you have access to the fixture, but you can modify it for a particular use case for whatever your individual test requires. So now going back to the video, the topic on using our Cypress hooks, we can actually load this object, the test runner this object, and then have access to the data that way as well. So with the cy fixture command, we have the example JSON file loaded up. But what we can do as well, if we grab, so we have before each down here, we can do it up here, and we can do before each. And I'm actually going to write this incorrectly first, just to show you what needs to be done in order to have the correct access to this object. So before each, we're going to do cy.fixture, and we'll grab our example, and we'll do that then, and we'll have our data, and then we'll do this.data. So we're taking this object in the test suite here, and we're saying this.data equals data. So we're just creating this data key on this object and then setting it equal to the data that comes in. And so if we save this and run it, we're actually going to get an error. Cannot set properties of undefined setting data. So the issue here is that when you use the fat arrow syntax, Cypress, the test runner doesn't have access to this object because of the way that the scope around this works. So instead of writing a fat arrow function, what we can do instead is we can use the function syntax. So we can say function data. And so now we have access to data, and we can update this object. So if we save this, and actually, so we want a console log. Let's go ahead and so we can cy.log this. Let's take a look at what we've got. So before each, we have access to this object, and so what we get is this.data is actually undefined. So what I think we actually need to do instead is not console log out or cy.log this, but cy.log this.data. And so now we can take a look. So if we rerun our test suite, we open this up before each, now we have this pointing to an object. And now we can see we have access. So this .data is equal to now our body, email, and name. So that's another way of accessing our fixture data and being able to use it in a test. And so now for a bit of an extension or a more real world example is we're going to actually look. So we're not covering this method in this video in depth specifically, but we're going to take a look at cy.intercept. And basically a high level view of cy.intercept is it's a way of kind of mocking out or stubbing out data. So if your application makes a network request, what Cypress can do is it can say like, hey, I'm expecting a GET request to this endpoint. When I Cypress see this request go out, I'm actually not going to make that request externally, but instead I'm going to like stop that network request from running and instead use whatever data that that I, the test writer, am providing. So let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. So we can say it uses fixture data in a network request. And so why you would want to do this, this is helpful for making sure that you've got, if you're not concerned about testing your API specifically in a given scenario, so you obviously you want to test your network requests themselves. But if you're just like looking to make sure that the UI is rendering correctly, or that some data is being pulled in the way that's anticipated, you can do this and not have to worry about any sort of like issues with the back end, and you can kind of test the front end in isolation by using this fixture data. And so what we can do is, so we expect it uses the fixture data in a network request. And so now we can use this function syntax, and we're going to visit commands/network requests. And this is just a different page in the application. And so from there, we're going to intercept, and we're going to be looking for any GET requests that are sent to anything pointing to comments. And so specifically, the way that this is written is there's going to be a network request to comments/1 with this button that we're about to click through Cypress. And what we're going to do is we're going to provide it with this.data. So in the before each, we set this.data equal to our data in the fixture. And we saw that logged where this object had data, which is now set to our fixture data. And so what we're doing here is with CY_intercept, we're looking for a GET request that's pointing at our comments endpoint. And instead of pulling down the comment information, we're replacing it with this.data. So actually, let me back up a step. Let's go ahead and get rid of this for now, and we'll come back to it just so you can see what this looks like. So cy.intercept, we're just gonna intercept the GET request, and we can actually alias this, so we can call it GET comment. And then we're going to grab a button. So there's a button with a class of network-btn, and we're going to click on it. And so the way that button is designed is it'll fire off a request to this comments endpoint. Then we'll wait for @getComment. So this alias that we set up here can now be accessed with this @ sign and then the name of the alias. And then what we'll do is we'll look for the response, and we'll cy.log the response. And we'll take a look at what we get just by intercepting this comments request. So uses fixture data and network request actually is not labeled correctly, but that's what we're going to turn it into. So if we open this up, if we take a look at the Cypress log here, you can see that we're visiting that network request page, and then we're clicking on the network button, and you can see here that it actually logs out this this comments/1. But what we're doing here is now we're waiting for that GET comment, and what we're doing now in this case is just logging the response. And so what we can see here, if we look at the response body, we can see that there's some placeholder text, an email, an ID, and a name. So what we can do, so this is the actual response, but what we can do is we can replace that, or we can stub out that network response with our fixture data. So if we add this dot data argument, now what we're doing is instead of just grabbing that comment's data from the endpoint, we're preventing that data from coming in and instead replacing it with our data, which we set in the before each hook. So if we save this, we can take a look now at how that data has been updated. So we open this up, we have our log, and now in our response, you can see our body is fixtures are a great way to mock data for responses to routes. So pretty cool and pretty functional way to provide consistent data for your tests to make sure that, again, you should be testing your API calls and testing your back end if you have one designed. But for the purposes of testing the front end with Cypress, in a lot of cases, you do need a consistent set of data, and fixtures are a great way to, as the body says, mock data for responses to routes. In our next video, we'll go ahead and take a look at writing some custom commands. So if we wanted to set up, you know, like kind of a custom sort of bundle helper function that did something like this, where maybe we passed in a URL and an endpoint and a piece of data or things like that, we could kind of bundle this all together as a custom command. And then that way we wouldn't have to necessarily like rewrite this particular test each time. So custom commands are a powerful way to kind of make your code reusable and reduce some boilerplate. So we'll take a look at that in the next video. Thanks for following along. As always, if you want to check out more information, we've got the blog page up at lambdatest.com/blog and the community test page up at community.lambdatest.com. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.